Welcome. I'm Jessica Tietjen, and this is the Evolving to Exceptional podcast, where we talk about reaching peak performance in our workplaces, homes, and communities so that we can live our best life possible, an exceptional life. I want to welcome back all of our Evolving to Exceptional listeners to this week's episode of the Evolving to Exceptional podcast. We're going to talk about something we haven't really delved into much recently in the space of compensation and some of the technologies and things that exist around it and the challenges around it. And we're going to do that today with Jeff Ilko. He is a VP of People and Performance. He's been in many different people and performance related roles throughout his career and brings just a wealth of experience and background and knowledge to this topic and people and performance practices in general. So, Jeff, I want to give you a chance to maybe give a little bit of our listeners a chance to get to know you and give us a little bit of your background, experience, and story.
Thank you, Jessica, and I'm very excited to be a part of this. My background, I grew up as a HR generalist, so touching all aspects of HR, compensation being one of the kind of hot topics that always goes around, right? It means something. It means a lot for the agency or the organization, and it means a lot to the employees. It's important for us in a way of attracting and retaining talent to an organization, staying competitive. In my background, I've been a part of and managed HR in small and large organizations, international organizations. And I think, there isn't a unique challenge that hits any one of those industries or different sizes of organizations. They all have the same challenge. Might have a little bit of different sprinkles on the top for the topping but the flavor is always the same. And really using the technology is one of the, I don't want to say the easy way to go about it because it's not easy, but it does simplify the process.
I think when I started out in an organization that didn't have HR. This was back, we were still faxing background checks. And there's a lot of paperwork and administration associated with HR in general. And I think what technology really brings that I think can be really powerful, like you said, is streamlining those types of things, getting those things to make your life easier so that leaders and managers can be more focused on the impactful conversations and engagement that they have with people.
Well, you're 100% correct there. I mean, nobody likes to push paper, right? You don't, I don't, managers don't, employees don't. And especially in today's day and age, right, where everything is on your phone. So the easier you could make those paperwork process, streamline that red tape, and to, just facilitate it through electronic workflow, the better.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about, and I know we've talked about the importance of compensation and how we manage it and what we do with it. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you're currently experiencing, what you're currently doing, and why this is a particularly relevant and important topic right now for you.
Oh, of course. Well, for me, I am getting ready to actually do a full market study for our organization. We haven't done one in quite a long time, and that can have an impact on how competitive we are in the marketplace. In the employment marketplace, right? So attracting talent, retaining talent, you want to be competitive, you want to be fair, right? But of course, we just had here in Missouri, we had the Proposition A that was approved in November, which was a minimum wage increase. So that impacts it. It's very important to identify and understand where you're paying compared to market, not just for attracting and retaining talent, but also for the organization's bottom line. We've got to manage a budget, right? We're in business to make money. So we've got to take that budget and that market and information and meld it together to what we can afford to.
What comes up, or what is it that you kind of like experience, or what are some of the challenges that are maybe precipitating doing this type of market study? Like if somebody in a similar role as yourself is thinking about, is that something my organization should do? How do I go about doing that? Like what is the rationale or the basis on which to make a decision to say, yeah, we need to spend the time to do this?
Well, I guess there's could be a lot of different things that could come into play in the decision to do it. One being, what is the response to your candidates coming in and you're interviewing for roles? Are you attracting the talent that you need to attract? Are you, if you have candidates that are coming in, you're making an offer and they're rejecting it because of the compensation, that could be a key issue where you need to go and doing this. A good practice is to do a market study every 3 years, or at least have a 3-year rotation throughout different segments of your organization to do that. If you've got people leaving, because of compensation, that could be another reason to do it if you haven't done it in a while. And of course, then if you have, more entry level, a lot of entry level roles where you're paying closer to that minimum wage, being sure you're maintaining the compliance with the minimum wage laws. The other aspect to that, though, too, is the total compensation package. I mean, it's not just the pay. Now, the pay is what means most to employees, and the earlier someone is in the career, right, the more value the dollar means than the total comp package. So there is a conversation that has to happen with people to make sure they understand this is the value of their benefits. This is the value of all their vacation time or their health insurance that they're getting. Challenges, you did mention what kind of challenges you might see going through this. Market data could be a big challenge. How does the organization measure themselves in the marketplace? How are you benchmarking yourself there? Kind of typical positions like HR, accounting, finance, those are very easy to match in the market because, almost every company has one of those. They're very easy to match. One of the challenges that I have with my organization, we're a creative agency, is matching our jobs to benchmark positions that exist in the marketplace, and they don't really exist elsewhere. I mean, they do, but there's not much data out there to support it. So the challenges that I have is I have to go through kind of a hybrid type of model where I'm weighting the jobs off of benchmark positions that I find in the marketplace that have equal or relevant type of responsibilities, similar type of jobs, and weighting it to that. So it takes a lot of time. Obviously, you can outsource all of this work, but that's expensive. So one of the way I approach it is I try to participate in as many market surveys as I can to provide data to those studies, because usually by participating, you get a copy of their study, of those results. But then I also utilize subscription software to where I can do market research on positions. And the data that's utilized so pay scale is one, and comp analyst is another common subscription software there. And the data that those companies use are pulled from companies. That's versus trying to go and finding information online, like from Indeed, for example, that might be employee reported. So you don't really know the validity of that data. So having a good data source is really important to the process.
Yeah, I can imagine how that would influence the outcome, which kind of makes me think, what is the intended impact or maybe the outcome that you hope to achieve as a result of going through this effort? Like, what is the goal or the ultimate outcome that you expect?
Well, for my initial project here, my ultimate goal is to see where we are against market and then what adjustments will I have to make, right? So I will have that information done by the time we're starting our budget process for next year, and those adjustments that we need to make, we can include in our budget process. What I've experienced in my past is sometimes a company can't afford to make all of those adjustments in one swing. So you've got to plan it out over 2 or 3 years, but it's coming. You're going to be doing it. That can be part of the conversation you're having with the employees, and it's in your budget. So you've got the dollars set aside to do that, to increase the competitiveness of your positions. But from an ongoing perspective, my goal there is then to make sure that I'm staying competitive, or I'm following at least my comp philosophy that I've set for the organization. That comp philosophy could be to meet market, right? I want to be as competitive as I can. I want to, pay what market's paying, or maybe I want to lead market. I want to be a market leader in there, so I'm going to pay above market because I want to attract the top talent. Or maybe I don't have the funds in there, or my revenue is low, or whatever. I need to lag the market a little bit. But if I'm lagging the market, hopefully I have other benefits in place that are kind of above market to help level the playing field.
I think that something's interesting about compensation and benefits in general is, or at least in my experience, and I'd love your thoughts on this, is that it's kind of, I've often heard it referred to as like a hygiene factor. You don't really notice it if everything's okay, but if it's not right, you definitely notice it, right? Like you notice kind of like if somebody is regularly showering, you don't really pay attention to it. But if suddenly somebody's not, then everybody notices, right? Like you notice there's an issue. And I think what ends up happening sometimes is organizations will either ignore it entirely, delay it, put it off, not necessarily pay attention to it, or they'll put in place something that's pretty standard. So every year we do 3% increases, or everybody gets the same thing, or it's at the same time. And there's not really a strategy around it. There's not really necessarily a reason why they do what they do other than to just check the box to do the thing. Has that been your experience in terms of the different organizations you've held, or have you seen some that have been really strategic in what they do?
I've seen from both sides. It kind of depends on the industry. Part of my experience is in the healthcare industry, and from a comp perspective, healthcare industry typically does 3% just cost of living increase every year, and that's it. It's really not performance based. That's great. Everybody's getting a 3% increase. Every year they plan for it, they get it, they move on with life. Doesn't mean anything though, right? But like you said, if they don't get it, they complain. But it also has a negative impact from a performance perspective. Your high performers and your low performers are getting the same increase percentage.
Yeah.
So why should I continue to try my hardest if you're just kind of sitting by and skating by and not pulling your weight? From a strategic perspective, when you're driving those merit increases, is a true merit increase, based off of performance. It's performance driven. Your high performers should be, even though you may budget a 3% increase, your high performers should be getting the higher percentage rate of an increase. Your low performers are getting less of an increase or maybe nothing at all. The idea behind that, the philosophy behind all that, right, is to either drive or influence your low performers to start improving, or they will filter out on the other end because they're not performing right. They're either going to leave on their own, or because of performance issues, they'll be managed out. From the benefits perspective, though, you're right. You never hear about anything unless it's not working right. So how does an organization stay strategic about that? A great way to do that, and which is part of my practice, is every year I do a survey about how are you using the benefits, what's working well, what's not working well. Are you interested in maybe adding this type of option to the plan or whatever? The idea behind that is, one is to give the employees a voice, because we want to offer them options that they are interested in. That is part of the compensation package, right? So that makes us a more sought after employer from that perspective. And I want to then also, if there's things that aren't utilized or options that aren't utilized or aren't valued by the employees, maybe I'm not spending money on those and I could shift those funds to something that is happening, that is needed, or save money for the organization. Unfortunately, one of the downsides to those surveys is you always find out things that aren't going right with the hospitals or medical groups that you really don't have control over. They stopped covering some certain kind of prescription, or it's moved tiers, or this doctor's no longer, they've left and they're no longer in the plan. Unfortunately, I don't have control over that.
Healthcare industry is definitely kind of like a beast in and of itself. I think what's interesting is the difference between a differentiated strategy that is customizable to the participants and one that is about checking the boxes. And there's a real kind of difference there. And I love what you said about how can you offer people things that meet them like where they are and what they need and give them choices. You don't see that a lot. Years ago, I experimented with, having a choice of like a benefit. You could get the company to invest in 50c3, for your college fund, for yourself, for your kids. You could have the money placed in, there was like 3 different things. I can't remember what they were, but there were 3 different things that you could put that money towards. And people could choose based upon like their life circumstance, their family, their situation. And people at the time really appreciated having that flexibility and that opportunity. I think it's interesting. In my view, the space has been pretty stagnant for a long time, and it's kind of ripe for maybe a revamp of what could a better approach to compensation and benefits look like. And I think one of the things that could be really valuable is looking at it through the lens of what's going to positively impact the people as well as the work. So what are the things that people need or would benefit from? And then how do you bring those two things together in an effective way?